History of tattooing. A tattoo is a form of body modification where a design is made by inserting ink, dyes and pigments, either indelible or temporary, into the dermis layer of the skin to change the pigment. Tattoos fall into three broad categories: purely decorative, with no specific meaning; symbolic, with a specific meaning pertinent to the wearer; pictorial, a depiction of a specific person or item. Brought to Europe from Polynesia in the early 19th century through naval routes, it was originally largely restricted to naval use, and was a male-only domain. By the later 20th century its use was more widespread and extended to female users. By the end of the 20th many stigmas of the tattoo culture had gone and it moved into the realm of being a fashion accessory for both men and women. Ancient and traditional practices of Japan. Tattooing for spiritual and decorative purposes in Japan is thought to extend back to at least the Jaimin or Paleolithic period and was widespread during various periods for both the Japanese and the native Ainu. Citation needed. Chinese texts from before 300 AD described social differences among Japanese people as being indicated through tattooing and other bodily marking. Chinese texts from the time also described Japanese men of all ages as decorating their faces and bodies with tattoos. Between 1603 and 1868, Japanese tattooing was only practiced by the ukiyo, floating world, subculture. Generally firemen, manual workers, and prostitutes wore tattoos to communicate their status. By the early 17th century, criminals were widely being tattooed as a visible mark of punishment. Criminals were marked with symbols typically including crosses, lines, double lines and circles on certain parts of the body, mostly the face and arms. These symbols sometimes designated the places where the crimes were committed. In one area, the character for dog was tattooed on the criminal's forehead. Tattooing was not always seen as negative either. The samurai picked up the art of tattoo after being forced to disband. Previous to Japan's unification as a country, it was split into many smaller city-states. These smaller independent states were protected by the samurai. Under a new emperor and new country, the samurai were forced to burn their armor, composed mainly of wood, in large gatherings, shifting local tributes to the new emperor. The samurai had served its people for many centuries, spanning generations, and were highly admired, almost being treated as royalty. Being stripped of their armor, the samurai adopted tattoo as a means of replacing the armor. In effect, the samurai were forced into hiding, thusly forming the fraternal order of the Yakuza. The Yakuza was originally seen as an organization of high honor, not the image it has in modern times. Often these previous city-states still paid their tributes to the local samurai, ignoring the emperor. This practice was eventually abolished by the Meiji government, who banned the art of tattooing altogether, viewing it as barbaric and lacking respectability. This subsequently created a subculture of criminals and outcasts. These people had no place in decent society and were frowned upon. They could not simply integrate into mainstream society because of their obvious visible tattoos, forcing many of them into criminal activities, which ultimately formed the roots for the modern Japanese mafia, the Yakuza, with which tattoos have become almost synonymous in Japan.